Zahara Wren's heart raced as she knelt over the bloodied man in the alley, knowing a single kiss could save his life or destroy her forever. The Mafia boss she was meant to fear now depended on her, and in that impossible moment, everything she believed about power, trust, and survival shattered. Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. Before we dive in, I want to know, what country are you watching from today? Drop in the comments. I love seeing how far our amazing viewers are tuning in from. The night in Elowen Springs was alive with restless energy. Fog curled along the narrow streets like ghostly fingers, and the wet cobblestones reflected the dim glow of flickering streetlights. Zahara Wren moved silently, her boots whispering against the slick stones, her eyes scanning every shadow. At 23, she had learned to read danger before it arrived, to anticipate it, avoid it, and, if necessary, confront it. She had survived too many near-death moments in her life to be afraid now. Yet tonight felt different. Tonight, she wasn't just walking into danger. Tonight, she was stepping into a storm. Her grandmother had always told her that courage was not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. Zahara repeated the mantra silently, letting the words steady her racing heartbeat. She gripped the small vial in her pocket, the rare serum that could save him. Her late grandmother had devoted her life to this serum, a cure meant for emergencies so rare they happened once in a lifetime. Yet here it was in Zahara's hands, and the life that depended on it was not just anyone's. It was Rafael Santoros. Even the thought of him made her stomach twist. Rafael the Hawk Santoro, Mafia boss, untouchable, feared by every street in Elowen Springs and beyond. His name alone commanded obedience, respect, and terror. People whispered about him in hushed tones, trading stories of his ruthlessness as if recounting fairy tales, dark, dangerous, and unbelievable. And now, he was lying in the alley before her, bloodied and vulnerable, his life balanced on the edge of a knife. She rounded the corner into Hollow Lane, careful to avoid the puddles that reflected the dim, sputtering lights above. The alley smelled sharp. Iron, rain, and something acrid like burnt rubber. And there he was. Raphael lay sprawled against the wall, one arm bent at an awkward angle, his crisp white shirt soaked with blood, the scar on his left cheek standing out like a warning carved into his skin. His chest rose and fell unevenly, ragged breaths escaping through clenched teeth. The faint sound of dripping water echoed against the walls, each droplet sounding like a countdown to the inevitable. Zahara's pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. This was a man who had destroyed empires, controlled kings and politicians, and silenced his enemies without a second thought. And now, his fate rested in her hands. Her fingers brushed the vial in her pocket. She had only seconds. The serum could save him, but it had to be administered in a way that no one else could do, directly through contact. Them in a kiss. One kiss, a single, dangerous act that could save him or damn her forever. She knelt beside him, her knees wet from the cold alley floor, and tried to steady her trembling hands. "Raphael," she whispered, and the sound of his name on her lips felt strange, intimate, and frightening all at once. He flinched, groaning, eyes fluttering open. When they met hers, she saw shock, pain, confusion, and beneath it all, a hint of something she couldn't name. Vulnerability. Humanity. The world outside the alley was moving, but it felt distant. Footsteps approached, enemies. The rival gang that had orchestrated the attack was closing in, unaware that Zahara was the one who held the key to saving him. She didn't have time to think, only to act. She pressed the vial to her lips, letting a single drop mix with her saliva. Her chest tightened. This was madness, pure and unfiltered, yet there was no other way. She leaned forward and kissed him. The effect was immediate. A jolt shot through her, electric and disorienting. Raphael's body tensed, then relaxed slightly, his pulse finding rhythm again. When she pulled back, his eyes locked onto hers, wide and searching. "Why?" he rasped, voice rough, breath shallow. Why save me? Zahara swallowed hard, ignoring the way her heart fluttered. Because you have to live, she said steadily, her voice firm despite the chaos inside. And sometimes, doing the impossible is the only way to survive. A shout from the shadows snapped her out of the moment. Footsteps, rough and hurried, were approaching. Zahara's instincts kicked in. She grabbed Raphael's arm, pulling him up despite the weakness in his limbs. He stumbled, his face pale, but he obeyed without hesitation. The adrenaline surged, burning away exhaustion. "Trust me," she whispered as she helped him navigate the narrow alley. And for the first time, Raphael did not resist. His hand found hers surprisingly firm, and she felt the weight of the man he was, the predator, the mastermind, leaning on her in a moment of need. They moved quickly, weaving through alleys, ducking behind dumpsters, and avoiding the pools of light from the street lamps. Zahara's mind raced. How had her life led to this moment? She had spent years surviving petty thieves, crooked cops, and dangerous strangers. She had never imagined she would end up running through the streets with a mafia kingpin whose enemies could end them both. The rival gang's shouts grew louder. Zahara's stomach knotted. They had to reach safety, somewhere hidden, somewhere they could regroup. She knew a place, a small, abandoned safe house at the edge of town, overlooked by everyone except her. She had used it once before during a petty gang dispute, and it had remained untouched ever since. The safe house was only a few blocks away, but every step felt like a mile. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then in heavy sheets that soaked them instantly. Zahara could feel the chill creeping in her bones, but she ignored it. Every second counted. She glanced at Raphael, whose usual cold, intimidating demeanor was replaced by something raw, fragile, and terrifyingly human. His jaw clenched, eyes narrowing. Yet there was a flicker of trust in his gaze that both startled and unnerved her. Finally, they reached the safe house. Zahara kicked open the door and dragged Raphael inside, locking it behind them. The small room smelled of dust and mildew, but it was safe for now. She lowered him onto the threadbare couch, brushing wet strands of hair from his face. The serum had worked. He was stabilizing, but he remained pale, fragile, and alive. Raphael's eyes met hers once again, this time with a depth that made her breath hitch. "Zaharan," he said slowly, voice still raspy but stronger. "You just changed everything. Do you understand that?" She nodded, a faint, ironic smile touching her lips. "I know," she replied. "And so did you." For a long moment, silence wrapped around them. Outside, the rain continued to pour, a rhythmic reminder of the chaos that lurked beyond their fragile sanctuary. Inside, Zahara felt the weight of the night pressing against her chest. She had saved a man whose life was as dangerous as the streets themselves. And she knew, with a certainty that made her heart race, that nothing in Elowen Springs, or her life, would ever be the same. As she settled onto the floor beside the couch, her back against the wall, she allowed herself a single thought. This was only the beginning. And in the shadows of the safe house, Raphael watched her, a predator learning the contours of his new reality, realizing for the first time that power, danger, and attraction could exist in the same breath, and that Zahara Wren had just become the most dangerous and captivating person in his world. The rain had slowed to a steady drizzle by the time Zahara Wren allowed herself to finally breathe. Her body ached from adrenaline and exhaustion, but her mind refused to quiet. Every shadow of the safe house seemed to watch her, as if the walls themselves had absorbed the tension of the night and were now silently judging her choices. She sank onto a chair across from Raphael, who still sat on the couch, his white shirt stained but no longer drenched in blood. The serum had worked its miracle, stabilizing him, but it hadn't erased the vulnerability in his pale, piercing eyes. "You're unbelievable," Raphael muttered, voice hoarse but steadying with each word. "Do you even realize what you just did?" Zahara tilted her head, letting a hint of a smirk tug at her lips despite the pounding of her heart. "I saved your life," she said evenly. "Nothing unbelievable about that. Raphael let out a short, humorless laugh. Save my life? You kissed me. You actually kissed me. Do you know what that means, Zahara? Her eyes narrowed. I know exactly what it means, she said. It means you're alive. That's what it means. He leaned back, eyes scanning her face, as if trying to decipher the enigma she had become in a single night. For the first time, Raphael Santoro felt exposed, stripped of the armor he had worn for decades. And for the first time, he realized that the woman in front of him was not just brave, she was dangerous in her own way. Dangerous because she refused to fear him. Dangerous because she had taken control when everyone else had cowered. Dangerous because she had touched his world and his heart in ways no one else had ever done. The sound of footsteps outside the safe house brought them both to alertness. Zahara's eyes flicked to the door. They're still out there, she whispered. The gang. They're probably trying to track us. Raphael's gaze hardened. Then we deal with them, he said. His tone was calm, but the edges carried the weight of command, the weight of a man used to getting what he wanted. Zahara felt a shiver run down her spine, not from fear, but from the undeniable power radiating off him. They moved quickly. Zahara showed him the hidden exit at the back of the safe house, a narrow crawl space leading into a series of abandoned tunnels that few in Elowen Springs even knew existed. The tunnels smelled of mildew and damp stone, but they were safe. For now, as they navigated the labyrinth, Raphael's hand brushed hers. Zahara flinched slightly, more from surprise than discomfort. He didn't pull away. Instead, he held her hand firmly, guiding her through the darkness. You're not afraid of me, he murmured. Zahara's jaw tightened. I'm not afraid of anyone, she said simply, though the words carried more weight than she intended. You're just another obstacle, Raphael. Nothing more. His lips twitched in the faintest smile. An obstacle I find intriguing, he said, voice low. There was a pause, a moment where silence hung between them, thick with unspoken thoughts. Zahara felt her pulse quicken, but she forced herself to focus. There were bigger problems at hand than his attention or attraction. When they finally emerged from the tunnels, the city streets were quiet. The rain had almost stopped, leaving a sheen on the roads that reflected the dim glow of streetlights. They had reached a temporary safe zone, a rundown garage owned by one of Raphael's least trusted allies. Zahara's instincts screamed caution, but she knew they couldn't stop moving. Inside the garage, Raphael leaned against a wall, arms crossed. His gaze lingered on her, sharp, calculating. Zahara, he said finally, tell me one thing. Why? Why risk yourself for me? Zahara met his gaze, steady. Because no one else would, she said simply. Because I knew you'd die if I didn't. And maybe because I saw something in you that even you refused to see. Raphael frowned, as if her words struck a nerve he wasn't ready to admit. You're a complicated woman, he said, almost to himself. Too smart for your own good, too fearless for your own safety. And I think you know that, don't you? She shrugged, a faint smile ghosting her lips. Maybe, but knowing doesn't make me stop. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the weight of the night settling around them. And then Raphael stepped closer. His voice dropped, softer this time, almost vulnerable. Do you understand what you've done, Zahara? You've changed everything. In my world, nothing ever changes. Nothing. And yet, here you are. You've broken that rule. She swallowed, feeling the tension coil tighter in her chest. I didn't break a rule, she said. I just acted. Survival isn't about rules. It's about choices. A distant noise startled them, metal clanging in the alley outside. Their temporary sanctuary was not as secure as Zahara had hoped. She moved toward the garage doors, checking the perimeter. They're still out there, she said, voice low. They're not giving up. Raphael's expression darkened. Then we remind them why no one messes with me, he said, and Zahara caught the dangerous gleam in his eye, the same gleam that had made him untouchable. She knew then that the man she had kissed and saved was not just grateful. He was hungry for retaliation. As they prepared to move again, Zahara's thoughts wandered for a moment to the kiss, the serum, the risk, the intimacy. It had been a desperate act, a gamble that could have cost her everything. Yet in that fleeting connection, she had glimpsed something she hadn't expected, a spark. A thread connecting her to a man whose world was dangerous, dark, and intoxicating. Raphael seemed to notice the subtle shift in her gaze. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Do you feel it too?" Zahara blinked, caught off guard. "Feel what?" "That connection," he said. "The one that shouldn't exist. Between us. After tonight, nothing will ever be the same. Do you understand that?" She nodded slowly, forcing herself to focus on the immediate danger rather than the magnetic pull between them. "I understand," she said. "But right now, survival comes first. Everything else comes later." Raphael's lips twitched into a small, almost reluctant smile. "Later," he echoed. "We'll deal with later, together." As the night stretched on, they moved through the city in tense silence, each step measured, each shadow watched. Zahara's mind raced with possibilities. The gang's next move, Raphael's plans, and her own role in a world she had never intended to enter. Yet despite the fear and the chaos, there was a thrill she couldn't deny, a dangerous, exhilarating certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. By the time they reached a secluded safe house on the outskirts of town, Zahara allowed herself a brief moment to breathe. Raphael collapsed onto a worn couch, fatigue evident, but his gaze never left hers. "Zahara, he said quietly, almost reverently, "you've saved me. Not just from death, but from a world I thought I controlled completely. And now you're part of it." She met his eyes, unflinching. "I didn't choose to be part of your world," she said softly, "but I chose to save your life. And sometimes that's all the choice you get." Raphael leaned back, eyes narrowing slightly, as if weighing her words. "Choices," he murmured. "In my world, choices are rare and precious. You just show me the value of both." Outside, the city slept, unaware of the storm that had passed through its streets. Inside, two unlikely allies, and perhaps something more, sat together, bound by a single impossible act, a kiss that had changed everything. And in that fragile silence, Zahara understood a truth she hadn't anticipated. In saving Raphael Santoro, she had not only altered his destiny, she had altered her own. For better or worse, nothing in Elowen Springs, or in their lives, would ever be the same again. Dawn crept slowly over Elowen Springs, painting the sky in pale hues of pink and gold. But inside the safe house, the night's chaos still lingered like a stubborn shadow. Zahara Wren sat on the edge of a worn chair, hands clasped together, trying to steady the rapid beat of her heart. Sleep had evaded her entirely, replaced by a flurry of thoughts. What had happened, what could happen, and what she had just done by saving Raphael Santoro. Raphael lay on the couch, fully conscious now, though still pale from the night's events. The serum had done its job. The immediate threat of death was gone. But the storm outside, the rival gangs, the whispers of betrayal, the dangerous world he ruled, was far from over. "I owe you my life," Raphael said quietly, his voice steady but carrying the weight of everything he had survived. "And I don't say that lightly." Zahara lifted her eyes, meeting his gaze with a steady confidence she didn't entirely feel. "You're alive," she said simply. "That's enough for now." A faint, ironic smile touched his lips. "Alive and aware," he said. "Aware that you're not just brave, but reckless, dangerous, and utterly unforgettable." Her cheeks warmed slightly, though she forced herself to remain calm. "I told you," she said, "it was survival, not heroics." He tilted his head, eyes studying her in a way that made her pulse quicken. "Survival," he repeated, "is sometimes the most heroic act of all." His words hung in the room, thick with unspoken meaning. Before she could respond, a sudden noise at the garage door made them both tense. Zahara's instincts flared immediately. Her body bristled as she reached for the hidden weapon she had tucked under the chair. Raphael, in contrast, moved with the quiet precision of a predator, rising to his feet and stepping in front of her. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a young man in a leather jacket, soaked from the morning drizzle. He raised his hands cautiously. "It's me," he said, voice low. "Leo. Raphael sent me." Raphael nodded once, relaxing slightly. "Good. You're on time," he said. Then, turning to Zahara, he added, "Leo's going to help secure the area. We can't stay here long." Zahara exhaled, tension leaving her shoulders in small bursts. This was her life now, danger intertwined with necessity. And yet, the thought of leaving Raphael, even for a short while, made her chest tighten in a way she hadn't anticipated. Hours passed as they worked to secure the garage and plan their next move. The rival gang had learned of Raphael's survival, and they would stop at nothing to finish what they had started. Zahara's mind raced, running through every scenario, every escape route, every strategy she had learned from years of surviving the streets. Raphael watched her, impressed, noting how quickly she adapted to the chaos around them. "You're remarkable," he said finally, breaking the silence. "You've saved my life, held your ground, and, without flinching, taken charge when everyone else would have faltered. I underestimated you." Zahara shook her head. "You should never underestimate anyone," she said. "Especially not me." Raphael's lips twitched into a small, dangerous smile. Duly noted. By midday, the tension outside began to mount. The rival gang had mobilized, tracking them through the city. Raphael and Zahara knew they had only one chance to end this. Not just survive, but take control. They prepared for confrontation, weapons readied, hearts racing, every sense alert. Zahara's mind, sharp and precise, directed their movements. Raphael, confident and lethal, executed the plans flawlessly. The battle was swift but brutal. Shadows moved through the streets, gunfire echoing in the narrow alleys. Zahara ducked behind a dumpster, heart pounding, eyes scanning for threats. Raphael covered her, his presence a protective force that was as intimidating as it was reassuring. Together, they fought with a synchronized rhythm, her strategy, his power. Within moments, the rival gang was routed, retreating into the city as sirens wailed in the distance. When the final enemy disappeared into the fog, Zahara and Raphael stood alone, bruised and battered, but victorious. The adrenaline that had fueled them now ebbed, leaving a quiet sense of triumph and exhaustion. Raphael lowered his weapon, his eyes sweeping over Zahara with an intensity that made her shiver. "You did this," he said softly. "Not me. You." Zahara shook her head, laughing softly despite the tension. "We did it," she corrected. Together. For a long, charged moment, they simply stared at each other, the chaos of the past night fading into silence. Then, slowly, Raphael stepped closer. Zahara's breath caught in her throat as he reached out, brushing a strand of damp hair from her face. "Zahara," he said, voice low and intimate, "tonight, you've not only saved me, you've changed everything, and I won't forget it." Her heart raced, and for once she allowed herself to feel the weight of the moment. "Raphael, He silenced her with a gentle, commanding kiss. It was nothing like the desperate, life-saving kiss in the alley. This one was deliberate, slow, and full of meaning, a kiss that spoke of trust, attraction, and something neither of them could deny. Zahara's hands rose instinctively, resting on his shoulders, grounding herself in the reality that this man, this dangerous, untouchable man, was here, alive, and standing with her. Pulling back slightly, Raphael rested his forehead against hers. "You're extraordinary," he whispered. "I never thought I would let anyone this close. But with you, I do." Zahara smiled, finally allowing herself to feel the victory, the relief, and the spark that had ignited between them. "Then maybe," she said softly, "you're not as untouchable as you think." The day wore on, and with it came the realization that Elowen Springs had changed. The streets felt quieter now, subdued, as if aware that something monumental had occurred. Zahara and Raphael, unlikely allies and perhaps something more, had survived the impossible. They had faced death, danger, and betrayal, and had emerged victorious, stronger, and undeniably connected. Later, as they sat together overlooking the city from the rooftop of a safe house, Raphael broke the silence. Zahara, tell me, do you ever think about what comes next? About this us? She glanced at him, her dark eyes reflecting the city lights below. I do, she admitted, and I think about how unpredictable life is, how one choice, one moment, can change everything. But I also think some things are worth the risk. Raphael smiled, brushing a hand along hers. Then we'll face it together, he said. Whatever comes next. Zahara's lips curved into a small, satisfied smile. She had saved a Mafia boss, survived the night, outwitted danger, and discovered something about herself in the process. Courage could lead to love, and the impossible could become reality. And as the sun rose fully over Elowen Springs, casting golden light over the town, Zahara knew this was only the beginning of a life, and a connection that would shock everyone who thought they understood power, danger, and love. Because she had kissed a Mafia boss. She had saved him, and in doing so, she had changed everything forever. As Zahara and Raphael stood together, overlooking the city that had once been filled with fear and shadows, one thing was clear. Their lives, and Elowen Springs itself, would never be the same. A single choice, a daring act, and a kiss had changed everything. Danger had been survived, trust had been earned, and a spark had ignited that neither of them could ignore. So, what would you do if faced with a choice that could save a life, or risk everything you know? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you do in Zahara's shoes. And remember, sometimes the impossible is only impossible until someone dares to act.